Okay, so let's unpack this. Cyber threats have literally never been higher.
Oh, absolutely. It's wild out there.
I mean, ransomware is this massive multi-billion-dollar shadow industry now, and the old digital perimeter for most companies has basically just evaporated.
Yeah, totally gone.
So why on earth did the world's leading cybersecurity standard just reduce the number of security controls you have to follow?
I know, it sounds completely counterintuitive.
Right. It almost sounds like they're just surrendering. But that paradox is exactly the mission for today's deep dive.
It's a great paradox to dig into.
Yeah, so today we are looking at a stack of framework transition documents. They detail this highly anticipated shift from the old ISO 27011-2013 Annex A standard to the newly modernized 2022 version.
And what's fascinating here is that this reduction, it isn't a surrender at all.
Okay, so what is it then?
When you really analyze these transition documents, it becomes clear this is a fundamental paradigm shift. I mean, the architects behind these standards, they looked at the landscape and realized the old, rigid way of organizing security simply did not map to the realities of modern cyber warfare.
Which means, whether you're an IT manager in the trenches or a compliance officer trying to secure a budget.
Or even just a business leader who wants to understand your actual corporate liability.
Exactly. This matters to you. So we are going to break down exactly what changed, the mechanics behind why it matters, and how you can actually navigate this transition without just drowning in compliance jargon.
And we really should tackle that paradox you mentioned right away. The documents actually refer to this as the Great Consolidation.
The great consolidation. I like that.
Yeah, so in the 2013 version of the standard, there were 114 specific security controls you had to evaluate. But in the new 2022 version, that total number drops down to 93.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
We are dealing with state-sponsored hackers and these crazy automated phishing campaigns, but the number of required security controls went down. I mean, did securing a massive enterprise network just magically get easier overnight?
Far from it, actually. The reduction is really about deduplication. It's about operational efficiency.
Okay, make that make sense for me.
Well, the 2013 version was notoriously clunky. It spread those 114 controls across 14 different domains.
That sounds like a bureaucratic nightmare.
Oh, it was. You would have access control policies in one chapter, and then cryptography in another, and then human resources security somewhere else entirely.
So things were just scattered everywhere.
Exactly. It led to this massive overlap where organizations were essentially doing the exact same work 3 times just to satisfy different clauses for the auditor.
Ah, okay. So it's less about throwing away security and more about just getting rid of the clutter. It kind of reminds me of the Marie Kondo method or like a coffee table in a living room a decade ago.
Oh, how so?
Well, 10 years ago, you had 5 different remote controls, right? One for the TV, one for the cable box, the sound system, the DVD player.
Yeah, and you could never find the right one.
Exactly. It was a nightmare to figure out how to just watch a movie. So the 2022 ISO update is basically trading all of that in for one smart universal remote. Like, the underlying technology hasn't disappeared, but the interface finally matches how you actually consume the media.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. I love that. To build that universal remote, they completely scrapped those 14 old domains.
Just toss them out entirely.
Yep. And they replaced them with a streamlined architecture built on just 4 overarching themes.
Okay, what are the 4 themes?
First, you have organizational controls, which consolidates about 37 items. Then people controls, which bundles 8 items.
Okay.
Physical controls with 14. And finally, technological controls, which makes up the final 34.
So organizational, people, physical, and technological. I mean, from a pure business logic standpoint, that reorganization makes infinite sense.
It really does. It's so much cleaner.
It totally aligns with how a company actually delegates liability. Like the human resources director immediately knows they own the people controls.
Exactly.
And the facilities manager takes the physical controls, while the chief information officer handles the technological ones. It breaks down those silos that used to make compliance feel like this isolated IT problem.
Yes, and that structural clarity is vital, but it also creates room for what is arguably the most important part of this transition.
Which is?
Well, by consolidating the old framework, ISO created the bandwidth to introduce 11 entirely new controls.
Oh, wow. So they shrunk the total number, but still added new stuff.
Exactly. And these are mandates that address threats that were either just fringe theories or completely non-existent back in 2013.
Okay, now I don't want to just read off an alphanumeric list of 11 new regulations because, let's be honest, that is a surefire way to put anyone to sleep.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear a spreadsheet read out loud.
Right. So let's weave these into a real-world scenario. Let's imagine you are a mid-sized company and you've just decided to migrate your entire customer database and all your internal software to the cloud. What happens?
Okay, so that scenario triggers almost all the new controls sequentially. The second you sign a contract with a cloud provider, you hit the first new mandate. Information security for use of cloud services.
Makes sense.
And since your infrastructure is no longer sitting in your own basement, you immediately need ICT readiness for business continuity, which
Right.
is basically asking, how does your business survive if the cloud provider has a massive regional outage?
Okay, so the foundation's in the cloud. Now our developers are building an application on top of it.
Right. Which brings in a whole wave of technical mandates. You now have to enforce secure coding practices during development.
Hysterical.
You also have to utilize strict configuration management so a developer doesn't, accidentally leave a back door open. And you need to implement web filtering to keep your network environment sterile.
Gotcha. And what about the actual customer data flowing through this app? Because, I mean, we are seeing strict privacy laws popping up all over the globe right now.
Yeah, the 2022 update heavily targets that data lifecycle. So you have to implement data leakage prevention to stop sensitive info from leaving your network.
Like someone emailing a spreadsheet to their personal account.
Exactly. Plus, you need protocols for information deletion when that data is no longer legally required. And if your developers are testing the software, you must use data masking.
Okay, so we've built the app, we've secured the data, but the hackers are still coming.
Always. And that is where the proactive defense layers arrive. You're now required to utilize threat intelligence and active monitoring activities to spot anomalies.
Okay.
And finally, wherever those physical cloud servers actually sit, there must be physical security monitoring.
Okay, so if we connect this to the bigger picture, walking through that scenario really highlights a philosophical pivot, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Because in 2013, the mindset was all about building a castle moat, like securing a static perimeter. But this new narrative acknowledges that the perimeter is basically dead.
Yeah, your data is everywhere now.
Right. So this is a shift from static defense to proactive dynamic resilience.
It's a massive shift. The underlying assumption of the 2022 standard is that you will be targeted. It's not a matter of if, but when. And you must have dynamic systems in place to adapt.
That is a lot to digest for an organization trying to catch up. So to give everyone listening some really actionable insight today, let's put a magnifying glass on the three most critical additions from that list.
Let's do it.
The big three. Let's call them threat intelligence, data masking, and cloud services. Let's start with threat intelligence. My question here is, how does an organization use this to stop merely reacting to a breach and start actually predicting one?
Well, historically, corporate risk assessments have been incredibly inward-looking. You scan your own servers, review your own software, and ask, where are our weak points?
Right, looking at your own navel.
Exactly. But threat intelligence forces you to look out the window. It mandates that organizations systematically gather and analyze information about emerging global threats before they ever manifest on your network.
But how does that actually work mechanically? I mean, are we just expecting IT teams to sit around reading cybersecurity news blogs every morning?
No, not at all. It works through automated API integrations and data feeds. So let's say you're a financial institution. You subscribe to a specialized threat intelligence feed that monitors dark web chatter and global attack vectors.
Okay.
That feed detects a brand new ransomware strain targeting banks in Europe, and it identifies the specific IP addresses the attackers are using.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, that intelligence feed then automatically pushes those malicious IP addresses directly to your company's firewall.
Ah, so your firewall updates its block list in real time. Like the threat is neutralized at your perimeter before a human being in your IT department even has a chance to pour their morning coffee.
That's precisely the goal. It integrates external intelligence into your internal defenses automatically. It turns security from just a dumb static wall into a highly calibrated radar system.
Wow. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though. We spend so much time talking about these external threats, the state-sponsored groups, the ransomware gangs.
Right.
But sometimes the most catastrophic breaches happen because of a routine internal process. And that brings us to the second big spotlight, data masking.
Yes. Data masking addresses a massive, often completely ignored vulnerability, which is the software testing environment.
Explain that for me.
Think about how software is built and updated. Developers need realistic data to test whether a new feature actually works.
Yeah, you can't test a credit card processor without credit card numbers.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But historically, companies would just duplicate their live production database, the one containing real customer names, real addresses, real credit card numbers, and just paste it into the testing environment.
Which means a junior developer testing a minor bug fix suddenly has unencrypted access to like a million real customer records on their local laptop.
Exactly. And those testing environments almost never have the robust security of the main production servers.
Oh man, that is terrifying.
It is a profound risk, and it violently clashes with modern privacy regulations like GDPR. So data masking solves this through algorithmic obfuscation.
Meaning what exactly?
Instead of using real customer credit cards, a tokenization engine scrambles the data.
Okay, so what does the developer actually see?
The developer still sees a 16-digit number that passes the software's validation checks, so the application functions exactly as it should during the test, but the data itself is just a mathematical ghost.
A ghost, I like that.
Yeah, it has no tie to a real human being. So if that testing environment gets compromised by a hacker, or if an insider decides to download the database to a thumb drive, the data they steal is completely worthless.
It's an elegant solution. You protect the data by essentially neutralizing its value outside the live environment. Okay, let's move to the third spotlight, which is arguably the most pervasive one: information security for use of cloud services.
This is a huge one.
Now, I want to use an analogy here to explain the mechanism of this control. Tell me if this tracks. Moving to the cloud is a lot like an independent chef deciding to lease space in a massive third-party commercial kitchen.
Okay, go on. I'm listening.
So, the company that owns the commercial kitchen, which is your cloud provider like Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure, they provide the infrastructure. They guarantee the physical locks on the doors, the sterile steel countertops, the fire suppression system, the electricity.
Right.
But if you, the chef, leave your highly proprietary secret recipe sitting out on the shared counter, or if you bring spoiled ingredients into the kitchen, that is entirely your fault. You can't blame the kitchen owner for your bad hygiene.
That perfectly illustrates what the industry calls the shared responsibility model.
Shared responsibility.
Yeah, and for the better part of a decade, businesses have fundamentally misunderstood this concept. There was this really dangerous, lazy assumption in boardrooms that migrating to AWS or Google Cloud meant outsourcing your security liability.
Like, hey, we're on the cloud now. Amazon handles the security.
Exactly. And that assumption has led to some of the largest data breaches in history. So the new ISO control mandates strict cloud governance and formal vendor risk management. You must explicitly define, document, and monitor the boundary of responsibility.
Because the cloud provider secures the underlying servers, but you are responsible for configuring the access controls.
Exactly. If you leave a cloud storage folder, like an Amazon S3 bucket configured to be readable by the public internet, the provider's firewalls won't stop someone from downloading it because you told the firewall it was public.
Right.
So this new control forces companies to actively manage their side of the commercial kitchen.
That makes total sense. So what does this all mean? We understand the logic of consolidating from 114 to 93 controls. We see the value of the 4 clean themes. We've explored the scenario of the 11 new mandates, and we've drilled into the actual mechanics of threat intelligence, data masking, and cloud liability.
Right.
But knowing the theory is very different from actually executing the transition. If an organization is facing an upcoming audit, how do they actually transition their compliance framework without just paralyzing their business operations?
Well, transition documents actually provide a highly structured 7-step roadmap to achieve this without the chaos.
Okay, let's walk through the mechanics of these steps. What is the very first move an organization has to make?
Step 1 is conducting a gap assessment. And this isn't just like a high-level conversation over lunch. It is a technical audit of your current reality against the 2022 standard.
Oh.
You overlay the new framework onto your existing network and look for the voids. Specifically, you look at the 11 new controls. Do you currently have a formal data deletion policy? Do you utilize threat intelligence feeds? If the answer is no, those are the gaps you must prioritize.
That makes perfect sense. Establish your baseline. So what is the second step?
Step 2 involves reviewing and updating your statement of applicability, commonly known as the AAA.
Okay, let's define the CELWay real quick for those who don't live in the compliance trenches. It is essentially the central nervous system of your ISO certification, right?
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
It's the master document where your organization explicitly states which of the 93 controls you're applying, how you are applying them, and crucially, the business justification for any controls you decide not to implement.
Spot on. And because the entire architecture changed, updating this OA is a pretty heavy lift. It requires a total rewrite to reflect the new four-theme structure, which leads directly into step 3,
Uh-huh.
mapping your existing controls.
Wait, how do you actually map a 2013 control to a 2022 theme? Are we just like changing the column headers in a giant Excel spreadsheet?
I really wish it were that simple.
Yeah.
Because of the consolidation we talked about earlier, mapping is rarely a one-to-one exercise. It is often a many-to-one evaluation.
Oh, I see.
You might have to take 3 separate HR policies from the 2013 standard, review them, and figure out how they combine to satisfy a single, unified people control in the 2022 standard. It requires deeply analyzing the intent of your existing security measures and proving they meet the modernized requirement.
Wow, that sounds like untangling a massive knot.
It can be.
Okay, so we've mapped the controls. What is step 4?
Step 4 is refreshing your risk assessments. Because, let's face it, the threat landscape of 2013 is ancient history. You must reevaluate the likelihood and impact of modern threats.
I imagine this is where companies get in trouble, right? By just copy-pasting last year's risk assessment and changing the date at the top. You have to actually sit down and ask, how does our new reliance on remote work or our new API integrations change our risk profile?
That is exactly the pitfall you have to avoid. A static risk assessment is completely useless today. So once you update those risks, you arrive at step 5, which is arguably the highest friction point in the whole process.
Let me guess. Training your employees.
You got it. Training your employees and stakeholders.
I can literally hear the collective groan of employees receiving another mandatory cybersecurity training module.
I know.
But the reality is, technology always fails if the human element isn't calibrated. You can implement the most advanced data masking algorithm in the world, but if a developer gets frustrated by the new process and finds a workaround to just use live data anyway, your security posture is 0.
Exactly. Which is why the training cannot just be a boring slide deck about rules. It has to explain the why. You have to communicate the business impact of these changes.
Okay, so once the humans are trained, then what?
Step 6 is formalizing that behavior by updating your actual policies, procedures, and governance documents.
Get the paperwork to actually match the reality. And the final step.
Step 7, engage your internal auditors early. Have an independent internal team run a simulated audit against the new framework months before the external certifiers arrive.
So don't wait for the final exam to realize you studied the wrong textbook.
Exactly.
An internal audit catches the blind spots while you still have time to engineer a fix.
This raises an important question, though, as we look at this 7-step process. Gap assessment, updating the SAWay, mapping controls, risk analysis, training, policy updates, internal audits. An organization can mechanically perform all 7 of those steps and still entirely miss the point of the 2022 transition.
Wait, how so? If they follow the roadmap perfectly, aren't they secure?
Not inherently. The ultimate philosophy driving the ISO 2022 update is a shift from compliance to effectiveness.
Effectiveness.
Yes. Are you building these systems just to show an auditor a spreadsheet and get a certificate to hang on the wall? Or are you building a resilient architecture that can take a punch from a real-world ransomware gang, isolate the compromised systems, and keep the core business running? The new standard demands proof that your controls actually work when tested by fire.
That is a powerful distinction. Let's bring this all together. We started by exploring a paradox, right? A standard that dropped from 114 controls down to 93.
Yep.
And we unpacked how this great consolidation wasn't about doing less, but about acting smarter. Reorganizing into 4 logical themes: organizational, people, physical, and technological.
Exactly.
Then we followed the journey of a company moving to the cloud to see how the 11 new mandates form this really tight web of proactive resilience.
And we analyzed the mechanics of that resilience. How threat intelligence feeds automate firewall defenses, how algorithmic data masking neutralizes the value of data in test environments, and how that commercial kitchen analogy explains the shared responsibility of cloud governance.
And finally, we mapped out the 7 operational steps to transition smoothly without breaking the business. But it all circles back to that core demand for effectiveness.
It really does.
Which brings me back to the imagery we started with. For decades, compliance has been viewed as an exercise in pure bureaucracy, checking boxes, filing paperwork, and just trying to forget about it until the next annual audit.
A static chore.
Right. But if this new standard mandates that you integrate live threat, feeds into your network, and requires you to constantly govern dynamic cloud environments, and forces you to mathematically mask data every single time a developer writes a line of code, I want to leave you with a lingering thought.
Let's hear it.
If ISO 1773001 requires this level of continuous proactive engagement, does this mean the era of treating compliance as a mere paperwork exercise is officially dead? Are we entering an age where corporate compliance and daily digital survival are the exact same thing?
It's a reality that every board of directors and IT department is going to have to confront very quickly.
Something for all of you to mull over as you evaluate your own network architecture and assumptions. Share this deep dive with your engineering teams, your compliance officers, and anyone trying to navigate the friction between business operations and security. Stay curious, stay secure, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.